Hello and welcome back to the nonsense channel of poorly edited motorbike praise and criticism. We're in grey old Silverstone to ride the new Ducati Streetfighter V2. Now last year I rode the Panigale V2, loved it, thought it was a great sports bike for the road, but it's still a very extreme kind of put your hips and testicles in your mouth sort of riding position. So if you don't want that and you've still got 15 grand to spend, then there's a naked version. I've not ridden it. I'm going to jump on because I'm freezing and I just want to get going. And then I'm going to stop for a walk around and tell you all about this. Shall we see what it sounds like? And then go for a ride. Very exciting. This is all very familiar. Small dash, like off my hyper motard. Hey, guess what? It sounds exactly like a Panigale V2. Now, I'm going to warm it up, do some dual carriageway stuff, which I'll talk about very briefly, then go on some country roads, and see if this is exciting, because all the press reviews I've seen of this from the international launch at the end of 2021, they kind of gave it 4 stars, and it kind of just came with a whiff of, you put us on a track and this is really a road bike. So let's see what it's like in March in the cold and slightly damp roads of Britain. Let's go. First impressions are that it's got proper mirrors. Ducati is doing mirrors very well at the moment. That's a very boring thing to talk about on a 150 horsepower bike, isn't it? Yeah, big solid metal doodahs. There's Aprilia's press fleet in there. I have missed the sound of that 151 horsepower now. What's it called, this? I can't remember. It's the Super Quattro, isn't it? I always forget Ducati's different names for all their engines. This is a 15 grand motorbike. I'm going to talk about all the specs when I do the walk around. But yeah, let's just bear that in mind, because this doesn't really have that many competitors. It's not really a super naked, because that's what the Streetfighter V4 is about, and it's still expensive. So yeah, let's work out what this is like. I think I'm gonna like it because it already feels tight like a tiger. Right, I'm on a dual carriageway now, so that's motorway speeds here in the UK. It's a naked bike. It is completely naked. I can see the red bits of that front nose cone, and then the little screen, and that's then the road. There's nothing there. There's not really any protection. I've got these slight radiator shrouds here, but my knees are in the wind, my face is in the wind. I am a big fat sail in the wind on this bike, but you knew that because it's a naked bike. So yeah, I mean, you're not going to really want to go touring on this unless you're a bit of a masochist, but you can be done, and you can tour on anything. The riding position is quite aggressive. Don't come to this expecting it to be a proper sit up and beg naked. It's putting you into that more dynamic kind of bum to the back of the seat, knees gripping the tank, elbows out, head down, race position. It's certainly got Panigale V2 roots. And actually I find that position helps on motorways because you're lent into the wind rather than holding on like this. But yeah, it's about as uncomfortable at motorway speeds as you would think. That's either okay for you or you might hate it. For me it's okay. I could do miles on this, but I know lots of you don't like nakeds on motorways. But anyway, that is the boring practical bit of this video done. I've done mirrors. They're quite hard to adjust and they're very stiff, but they are lovely and metal, as I said. And I've done dual carriageways, so there we go. Now I can spend the next couple of hours knobbing about on back roads, which I'm very excited about. Titty Ho Motor Company. I don't think Titty Ho is a real place, is it? I think that man is a swinger. Right, anyway, a swinger in a Sorrento, things I never thought I'd see. So, what about that motor then? I'll talk facts and figures in a minute, but first of all, let's explore the noise of it. Second gear, into a national. Yeah, little wheelie off that crest. It's fast. Whoa. Yeah. Yeah, like I said in my review of the Panigale V2, this engine is a peach on the road. However, it might be a mid-strength middleweight, but nowadays that means it is too fast for the road really, this engine, if you want to explore the upper reaches, which you will want to, because it sounds like this, but it's still got most of the airbox out of the Panigale V2. It's not quite as noisy through the induction, and apparently the only reason this is 2 horsepower down on the Panigale V2's motor is because it doesn't have such a big air intake on the nose of the bike. Oh yeah, okay. This is already striking me as a very intense bike to ride. The suspension is definitely on the firm side of things. It's compliant, but it's definitely got sports bike roots. It is not like a monster that's been set up for the road. Wow, okay, so initial impressions are, it feels a lot more playful and a lot more flighty than I thought it was going to. This is what happens when you watch other people's reviews and read reviews. People say, oh, you know, it's a Streetfighter, but it's not a wheelie monster like the old 1098 Streetfighter. This has done some little ones off crests. 3rd gear, that feels like all I need, to be honest. Okay, yeah, it is, it is thrilling. I have a bit of a checkered past with the V4 Streetfighter, the bigger brother to this, which is about 5 grand more than this. I just thought that bike felt a bit too serious, the way that V4 motor resists wheelies, the counter-rotating crank and all the electronics, everything else. And it just feels like a straight line rocket ship that needs to live at the top end of the revs. This, already, at real road speeds, speeds on real roads, not fake roads, this already feels more playful than the V4. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to use that lovely down blipper and find out again, going from this 30 to a 60. Yeah, about 8,000–9,000 RPM, it's trying to lift the front wheel over crests. The brakes, yeah, phenomenal. Goodness, I'm going to take it a bit easy because there's lots of crap on the roads, but clean your roads up, farmers. Oh, that pulls hard. Yeah, it's a revy engine, but it has got stacks of mid-range, but the mid-range is about 6–7,000 RPM. It revs to 11. Just cruise around here. Oh, it's so confidence inspiring. This chassis feels super taut. Yeah, it's sports bike stiff when you've got it tipped in, but that just gives you masses of confidence. You feel directly connected to the front tyre, which isn't always the case in naked bikes. Sometimes you're sitting up, you feel a bit distanced and it feels like the front end could be in Ethiopia and you're in Colorado. It's not like that. This feels very direct, very connected. Ooh, yes. I like what Ducati has done with this. They have literally done something quite old school and taken the fairings off a sports bike. It's lumpy at low RPMs, and yeah, you'll be using 2nd gear in 30 limits. Let's go up to 3rd. Yeah, it's only just about happy at 30 miles an hour in 3rd gear. Yeah, it's a racy thing. Manhole covers, felt that one. That was made in 1948. That one, I could feel that through my sphincter braille. Yeah, the seat. Let's talk about the seat. It is a 2-part seat, so it's like a sports bike seat. There isn't a huge amount of room to move forward and backwards. I realise I'm going along doing this looking like I am copulating with the fuel tank. So yeah, it's gonna be a bike for the committed, this. Don't look at it and think, oh yeah, that'll replace my Monster 1200 or something like that, because that similar power, now not in production, that made its power in a very different way, and it was very much a more leisurely ride than this. This has got a hard edge to it. That said, this is still meant to be a lot more road focused than the Panigale V2. The electronics are more tuned to be suitable for the road, and the suspension, although it is still I think Sherra Fork sack shock, it's basically the same as the Panigale V2. They've been retuned for the road, so a bit softer. I'm not really feeling the softness that they claim. Oh no, there's another national speed limit. Wow! Yeah. That little wheelie off that crest in third gear. Hello. Oh, wow, okay. What a hoot. Right, I'm going to stop and do a walk around and talk about the facts and figures and actually show you this bike in detail, including some of the options and the options prices, which is my favourite thing to do with Ducatis. But as a bike to ride, my initial impressions of this are, it's hardcore. It is hardcore, but I like it. This is very much aiming at people that want to get away from lent over superbikes that still want that level of feedback, engagement, and most importantly, second gear lols, and third gear, and fourth gear, and fifth gear. Right, back in a bit with my proper camera on a gimbal. That's my Ducati Streetfighter V2 face. That was very exciting, but anyway, I'm going to give you a quick walk around, tell you numbers and point out some details I like about this and talk about some of the differences between this and the Panigale V2, so let's get cracking. I'm going to put my face behind the camera, thankfully. Hang on. Okay, apologies for any wind noise, it is just quite windy. Here is what I've been having such a laugh on for the past hour or two. It's a Streetfighter V2, and Ducati's clearly doing its black logo thing for 2022, which I quite like. It looks quite simple, quite moody, quite aggy. Anyway, this is a £15,195 motorbike. It's got 153 horsepower and 101 Newton meters of delicious syrupy torque. You can only get it in red, which is, you know, I imagine that will change over the years. I want them to do a yellow one. Stop being cowards, Ducati, and go back to your 848 Street Fighter days and give us that liquid yellow. Indicators, let's talk about them because that's interesting. Oh no, wait, it's not, but they're not LED as standard. You have to upgrade like on every other Ducati, and there are some other options that you'll probably want to put on this bike, or maybe not given the price. A slip-on, a Krapovic slip-on, £3,000. A Krapovic full system, £4,200. Carbon wings, because you can put the wings on this like the V4, it doesn't get them as standard, £1,151, or plastic ones for £237, and you can get a little translucent screen here for a bit of wind protection. That's 210 quid, and heated grips, £273. So yeah, obviously you can put options on it, but then we'll start taking the price up, what, 16, 17 grand, and then it's almost into super naked territory. But anyway, this is basically a Panigale V2, obviously naked. It's got a 17 litre fuel tank, same as the Pani V2, single-sided swing arm, same as the Panigale V2, same exhaust. Basically, they have just done a classic take the clothes off your pretty supermodel superbike. That's a bit Alan Partridge, wasn't it? That swing arm though is 16mm longer, I guess for added stability, but this still does like to do little wheelies off crests, as we've possibly seen. The seat is 5mm taller than on the Pani V2, and it's got Diablo Rosso 4 tyres, which are slightly more road biased, I guess. Now the engine, I talked about this briefly in the riding section. It's 950cc, obviously it's V-twin. It's only really been detuned because of the air intake system. It's got slightly smaller intake on this, so that kind of knocks 2 or 3 horsepower off what the Pani V2 gets. But it still makes a fantastic noise, and it's actually the first Ducati with different torque mappings for first, second and third gears, so you get a bit less torque than in 4th, 5th and 6th to help manage it. I would like to have a race mode where that is disabled, but anyway, we'll see if they do that over the years. It's also got shorter gearing. I think it is up 2 teeth on the rear sprocket compared to the Panigale V2. Tech-wise, yeah, this is why I'm always slightly disappointed in Ducatis when they're not the top-end ones. You get such a small little screen. I mean, it's fine. It's similar to one on the Hyper Motard and things like that. Oh, it's a 15 grand bike, isn't it? I want like a 5 or 6 inch one, that's what she said. In terms of riding modes, you adjust them using this button here, and you've got sport, road, wet, and they basically just adjust the usual things like ABS traction control, wheelie control, and engine braking control. It's got an up and down quick shifter as standard, but that's basically it in the tech department. No heated grips on this one. Switchgear, same as on the Hyper Motard 950. You've got the Showa forks there that I mentioned. Different settings on those to the Panigale V2, and there is the sack shock in I'm Not Erlin's yellow. But anyway, that's pretty much it. There's not an awful lot to it. There's the seat that I spoke about in the riding bit of this. It's a sports bike seat. If you like sports bike seats, you'll like this. If you don't, you probably won't. And it's got a big high up pillion seat where they'll feel like they can reach out and grab the moon. It's up so high. I like the look of this. It's a cleaner design than the Streetfighter V4, and I already prefer it to ride. Go and watch my Streetfighter V4 video for why that wasn't my favourite Super Naked. But anyway, it's getting windy. Let's hop back on, do some more riding, and I'll tell you why I like this. And not just because it's got this really cool daytime running light signature. Ooh. Right, let's continue onwards on our Streetfighter V2 adventure. I do love the sound of that Super Quadra engine when it fires up. Same on the Panigale V2. It sounds boisterous, noisy, and I've got pretty terrible steering lock. I should point out, obviously, coming from a sports bike, this isn't going to be great at cutting through traffic when you've got to do tight turns to get into different lanes when you're filtering. So just be aware of that. It has got yeah, a slight paucity of lock. But yeah, that noise is just, it's old school, it's booming, it's loud. And it's something that Ducatis these days don't necessarily always do. I guess one thing we should talk about with this bike really is kind of where it sits in the market, because it's a £15,000 bike. That's expensive by anyone's measuring stick, and yet it's not a Super Naked. Obviously Ducati's, the Streetfighter V4, that's kind of 21 grand by the time you've got the S model, which is probably the one you really want if you want that bike. This is, yeah, this is still quite expensive really, all things considered. Obviously it is still absolutely rapid. It goes faster than a Richmond sausage in a contest to eat the worst sausages you can buy in Britain, and it's just, it feels to me in isolation like all you really need, certainly on these twisty B roads. Oh, I love the confidence it gives me. It feels sensational. But yeah, kind of what are its rivals really? Because to me, I'm a normal consumer. Okay, I live in journalist land where you learn the list prices of things, but £15,000 you can get a year-old Super Duke like pre-reg for 13, and that's much more of a bike than this if you want Super Naked thrills. But I don't know, 15 grand's just a slightly weird spot. It's so close to things like you can get an S1000R brand new for cheaper than this. Obviously you've got the whole, oh, it's full cylinder, it's got no soul thing, which is nonsense. That's a really good bike. But yeah, if you're looking at spending your own money, obviously if you're getting it on finance, you've got to get new, then this is going to be cheaper than the crop of Super Nakeds. But if you wait till winter, you can get things like Toronos for close to 15 grand anyway. It's all a bit weird, but you know, if you're a Ducati customer and you want a Ducati, then it's a cracking bike. But if I had 15 grand of my own money, I'd probably just step up and get one of the big girl, or big boy, I'm trying not to be sexist, Super Nakeds, like the Super Duke, the Torono, the BMW, probably not the Streetfighter V4, sorry Ducati, that bike just did not click with me. But anyway, yeah, let's go do some more riding of this motorcycle. I'm in sport mode, I should point that out. I don't think I have. I've just left this in sport mode because it's going to be most exciting, isn't it? So, to try and put this in perspective, because I know I can't always show how fast things are on YouTube, and it's hard to really demonstrate speed of these things, I've been a little bit too scared to go full throttle in second gear on a middleweight. That's just nonsense, isn't it? Anyway, let me put on my halogen bulb indicators. It does always strike me as cheeky that Ducati doesn't give you their nice slim LED ones for the price of the bike, but there we go. Right, first gear. It is trying to lift over every crest when you're on full gas in second gear. It feels bloody exciting. Yeah. I also like the fact that I know I've whinged slightly about the seat not having much room forward to back. Because the pillion seat is such a step up, you can really brace your tailbone against it, which you kind of want to do when you're accelerating hard on this, because it is pushing you back in the seat. Right. Yeah. That is where you sense that this isn't a full-blown litre plus Super Naked. Fourth gear at 40 miles an hour, full throttle. it gets going, it gets going. But obviously if you did that on any of the proper supernakeds like S1000R, it would absolutely take off. Whereas this just takes a little bit of, you know, a bit of spooling up to get into the meat of its rev range. It isn't as tractable as any of the bigger bikes, but that kind of goes without saying, really, doesn't it? It's just something to be aware of, that you do need to work this engine to get the best out of it. Anyway, I'm whittering now. I am whittering. I'm just trying to say that this bike sits in a slightly weird place. But that doesn't make it a bad bike. I've absolutely loved my time on this bike, and yes, this is me doing a conclusion. This bike is hardcore. It is stiff, it is quite raw, it still feels pretty much like an unfettered sports bike with straight bars and slightly more road bias tyres on it. I like that. I like that sort of thing. It doesn't feel puddingy and wallowy. It feels hard edged, it feels sharp, and it gives you sports bike confidence in corners, through your bum, through the handlebars. Yeah, the whole thing feels alert, it feels alive, and absolutely no nonsense. That engine, low down, it is lumpy, it is not a pussycat, and as soon as you get above 6,000–7,000 RPM on a full gas, you're sodding off really quickly. So I'd say I prefer this to the Streetfighter V4. I think the engine gives you more fun more of the time without losing your license. I also slightly prefer the noise, but you know, whatever. It does just feel like a very good road bike, and if you're coming from a sports bike and you want to get on a naked that feels familiar in its chassis, this is kind of one of the best I've ridden this side from the Aprilia Tuono, which again is more money, and do you want an Aprilia, etc, etc, might not be any dealers near you. So yeah, I'm really impressed. I'm waffling so much, I'm sorry, but it's a kind of semi-confusing bike really. I'd have it over the V4 Streetfighter. It's way cheaper, it gives me on the road the same thrills. Maybe on track it's not going to have the speed that you really want, but I wouldn't see myself getting bored of this in a very long time. The sound's great, it looks great, it's vaguely affordable despite being, you know, 15 grand expensive, but on finance it's going to be alright. It's going to be alright, and it's a Ducati, so really good dealer support, etc, etc. In my experience, I know there'll be people out there whinging that someone from Italy came over with a horse's head when they tried to get their 1198 serviced, etc, etc. Would I buy one of these? Not as my first bike. This is too hardcore, for me at least, to be an only bike, especially now I'm in a old man adventure bike ownership. But as a second bike, and I do want to buy a sports bike, absolutely, I'd be happy doing track days on this. I'd be happy going out for a razz with sports bike owning mates on this. Obviously you're going to keep up with them. It's got 150 horsepower. Unless you're breaking all speed limits in the land, you'll be fine. But yeah, Streetfighter V2. If you even vaguely think you want one, you probably really do want one. Go and ride it and find out for yourself. Hopefully that's been useful. It has. Click like, do comment, subscribe, and call me the national speed limit in the comments. No.